Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today I want to highlight some Underfollowed 9.8 comics that I have in my collection. And if I didn't already have these ones, I'd be really tempted to get out there and try to buy them. And most of these ones are pretty old, and they're great collector items. Yeah, they're, being a little bit underfollowed. They're pretty hard to find at a fair value. So yeah, really great collector items, looking pretty good on the census for these ones. So first one up, it's an X-Men 112. I really like this book. It's essentially like a non-key of that John Byrne, Chris Claremont era of X-Men, which is so classic. You almost can't go wrong with like any type of book during this whole era. But this one's a great one to try to get in the super high grade. It sort of surprised me from where I kind of bought mine and the price. It's kind of held its price quite well, and people are willing to pay up for this one for sure. It's got a great cover, yeah, and it's a George Perez, Bob Layton cover, and I'm pretty sure this might be the only George Perez X-Men cover from this era. Like, he was really on the Avengers and I think Fantastic Four a little bit during this era. But yeah, it seems to be really targeted, even though it's a non-key issue. But yeah, just a great cover with kind of Magneto controlling Wolverine, which is always interesting. Magneto's always kind of got the upper hand on Wolverine. But there's 146 9.8s in a blue label. 9.7% is the 9.8 ratio. This one's from 1978, so you kind of expect it to look pretty great on the census. Saw one recently sell on eBay for $749.95. I think you get into the 600s on this one if kind of a stealthy auction pops up, but not too many of these. It's a pretty tough one to kind of find at an auction. But one did sell for $749.95, and I'd purchased mine for $350. I think it was in 2019. Might even have been 2018, but sort of in that area. So despite it not really being a key issue with a big first appearance or anything like that, this one has kind of slowly but surely ticked up in value. And yeah, post-pandemic, $750, pretty great one. And yeah, I think you find that with some of these books that they're just really great collector items. They're tough in a 9.8, and yeah, even though they're not a key issue, they still seem to be steadily rising in value, which is nice to see. Okay, next one is Detective Comics 523. Yeah, this is the first time you see Killer Croc, cameo of Killer Croc, kind of in his trench coat. Like, for the first few appearances of Killer Croc, he's in his trench coat. But I really always like the cover on this one. This one's the sort of like orange-yellow Solomon Grundy cover, and it always like was very comparable to Batman 357, which is kind of like the green-toned cover. I always like this cover better than Batman 357's cover. But, Batman 357's great as well. It's more expensive, and you get the Jason Todd first appearance in that one. But Detective Comics 523 is absolutely one to think about if you're a big Batman fan. Yeah, this is one I'm really happy to have in my collection. With I got the Batman 357 too, so they work as just like a great pair to have. Yeah, I really like having the pair of them. 58 9.8s for this one. Oh, 1 of 58. Yeah, I like a lot of these. Just great collector items in the super high grade. 19.3% is a 9.8 ratio. So I think for this one, I was kind of having a hard time finding some completed listings. I did see a newsstand on Heritage Auction. I think it sold, this was some time ago though. I think it was either the beginning of this year or maybe late last year. It sold in the 300s. I think it was like $330 for the newsstand edition. I think right now in a direct edition, the market's cooled down a little bit since then. I think you can aim for kind of $225, maybe $250, sort of in that range, maybe a little bit over if you really want it. Maybe even a little bit under if you get lucky in a stealthy auction. But yeah, kind of hard to find some completed listings on this one with only 58 out there. Luckily, I do have one. And I'm pretty sure I paid $250 for mine, maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, so this one I'm not too sure if it's on the best trend. This would have been pre-pandemic too, that I bought this one for about $250 or so. But still one to consider, I think, if you're big Batman fan, and I've really enjoyed having it in my collection. So if this one just kind of stays at about the value where I bought it, and I can get rid of it at about that value whenever I want to, and kind of enjoy that pride of ownership for basically free over time would be good enough for me. Yeah, a 1 of 58, great collector item. So yeah, hopefully you get it like a little closer to 225 if you want this one. Yeah, Detective Comics 523. Next one is just a pretty great underfollowed one, as if you're a Star Wars fan, you know, looking for something different out there. It's a Star Wars number 81. Yeah, the return of Boba Fett in this one, or Boba Fett. And yeah, like you'd think that, you know, the Star Wars book, what is it, 60? I forget the number, but with the yellow cover with Boba Fett on the cover. That one, apparently, he's a clone in that story. That one is the first Mandalorians, though, so it's, you know, really well collected as well. But this Star Wars 81 is, like CGC denotes it, as the return of Boba Fett. And I think it's a pretty great collector item. I love the cover, too. Yeah, Tom Palmer cover. Some Tom Palmer covers are just, he just absolutely nailed it. Like, so ahead of his time. Fantastic art, especially on this one. It's so realistic and just a great collage of Star Wars characters on this cover. So just a cover to love. Pretty great collector item, 179.8. There used to be less than 100 of these ones, you know, when I grabbed mine. And actually, this was one where, when I first got into things in 2018, I sent 11 books, I think it was, to CGC to get graded. And this was one of them, and it came back a 9.8. So I actually didn't buy this one. But when I got this one graded, there was less than 100 of them in a 9.8. But the Boba Fett show came out, and everyone was kind of getting any Boba Fett key issue graded that they could. So 170 in a 9.8, 15.8% the 9.8 ratio. Having a little trouble trying to find some completed listings on this one as well. There's a couple on eBay that are like $425 or best offer right now. So, you know, I think a pretty good deal on this one is like in the $250 range. You know, I think on those $425 or best offer listings, you could probably get the deal done around $300, but I think a really good deal would be about $250. But yeah, if you really like this one, around $300 I think is a decent deal as well. Yeah, so Star Wars 81 is a pretty great one to consider in the underfollowed category for Star Wars fans. Next one's awesome, kind of a classic George Perez key issue, I think. It's Green Lantern 141. Yeah, I really enjoyed having this one in my collection as well. It's the first appearance of Omega Men. Yeah, and I kind of sort of think of Omega Men as like almost like the Guardians of the Galaxies of the DC universe. Sort of before the Guardians of the Galaxy blew up on these like new movies that had come out in the last, you know, 5 years or so. So Omega Men, a pretty stealthy first appearance on this one, and a great cover, great George Perez cover on a Green Lantern 141. Awesome collector item in a 9.8, 45 of them out there in the blue label 9.8. 14.3% is the 9.8 percentage. And I think for this one, I'm pretty sure I saw one go a little closer to 200. It's such an underfollowed book that, you know, if it pops up on Comic Link or something, you might get a good deal and get it a little closer to 200. But 250 to 300 I think is also a really good deal. Again, kind of having some hard time finding completed listings for some of these because they're just great collector items and there's not a ton out there. There is one on eBay right now, I believe. It's a 500 or best offer. So that, you know, you might be able to get the deal done on that one for maybe $350 or, you know, if you're lucky, around $350. I'd purchase mine for $300. So, you know, I think right in that kind of $250 to $300 range would be a great deal. And I've seen them go less than, like at the time when I purchased it, it was the only one that I was seeing out there. And I sort of thought that I was probably overpaying. But yeah, I think if you are super patient on this one, there's only 45 out there, and one pops up on a Comic Link or on an eBay auction, you might get it for around $250. But I paid $300 for mine. The 500 OBO is out there right now on eBay. But Green Lantern 141, especially if you're a George Perez fan and, you know, maybe a little bit into speculating on a first appearance that could work out over time of the Omega Men. This one might be worth it. Yeah, great cover too. Yeah, just one I've really enjoyed having, and it feels great to kind of have a 1 of 45 collector item, which is, you know, one of the big appeals, I think, of like the underfollowed, underrated type of books, in a 9.8 is that there's just not a lot out there, and it feels good to have those rare collector items. Speaking of rare collector items, DC Spotlight #1, the next one. This one's from 1985. It was a free comic book apparently in 1985, but this one previews The Watchmen and Batman: The Dark Knight Returns for the first time, like before those books came out. So essentially the first appearance of Watchmen and Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. So I'm a huge Batman: The Dark Knight Returns fan. This is one that I was just lucky to get, and lucky to kind of get one at a decent fair value, because there's a 37 out there, a 1 of 37 in a 9.8 in the blue label. 19.2% is the 9.8 ratio. So yeah, again, in the last year, I saw one sell for $349.99, and I paid, it was $400. It might have been a little bit over. I think it was like $405 or something like that. Which I think at the time was probably a bit of a pay up, but with these ones where there's not too many out there, sometimes I'm just kind of willing to get a deal done just to get to have the collector item, I guess. A 1 of 37 on this one. There's one on eBay right now though, $465 or best offer. So that $350 might get a deal done on that one. So you know what? I think around $350. If you're a huge Watchmen or Batman: The Dark Knight Returns fan, I think this one's pretty much totally worth it. Around $350, a fantastic collector item, a 1 of 37. You know what? I'm pretty sure there's one signed by Frank Miller on eBay as well, and I think it's like $1,250 or a best offer. So if you're really serious about this one, that one's out there as well. But yeah, around $350 if that 465 OBO. If you could get the deal done around $350 on that one, if you really like this one, I think that would be a pretty great deal. But great collector item. It's got those, preview appearances. I don't want to say they're the first appearance, but previews of a Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. If you're big fans of those series, this one is absolutely one to think about. Okay, and the last one from the modern age. Maybe not as tough of a collector item, but really up there on the kind of coolness scale, I think. Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. This is one I did pick up kind of in the last year or so. It was probably about a year ago. Great read on this one. A little mini series. The first Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossover. It was a pretty big success, so they ended up coming out with, I think there's 2 or 3 Batman TMNT crossovers. But this is the first one. In the first printing is the one that I got. There's a couple other variants, like an Eastman variant. I think there's a 1 for $50. Eastman variant that's pretty sought after. That goes a little higher than the first print. But in the first print, there's 179 in a 9.8, and 59.3% is the 9.8 ratio. I saw one sell on eBay pretty recently for $113.95. You can get lower than that. I think there'd been a few that had went for kind of $115 or best offer. I purchased mine for $90. So I think $90 is absolutely doable. I think if someone has kind of a best offer type of listing, you might even be able to get it cheaper. Yeah, I think this one's probably, the market's kind of cooling down recently. This one's probably one that you can get in an auction for like $75 or something like that. I bet that's pretty doable. But there's not too many of them out there, so you got to be on top of your searches to kind of find that auction price. Be patient with a lot of these. You kind of got to be patient if you want to get the best deal on them. But yeah, they're all pretty great collector items. And yeah, Batman TMNT. I'm a huge Batman fan. I'm a huge Ninja Turtle fan. So this one was just kind of making sense for me. And I bought it was in Canada, the auction that I purchased it from. So at $90, it's probably right in the middle of the fair value. And since it was in Canada, I decided to pull the trigger on this one. In the first print, cool cover. Yeah, great art, great read as well. If you get around to reading this one, super enjoyable. So in the modern age, yeah, Batman TMNT #1, if you're big fans of those franchises, is absolutely one to consider. Okay, that'll be it. Just, I really like some of these type of books. Like an Underfollowed book that's not an obvious key, but maybe it has like just a great looking cover, or for whatever reason. I know the Detective Comics 523. I really remembered that one when I was a kid. Like it was that book and Batman 357 were like those big 1980s Batman keys. So I always wanted to add that one. Star Wars 81 was kind of new to me at the time, but I think that this eye appeal of the Tom Palmer cover with the Boba Fett on the cover, it's sort of a minor key, I guess, with the return of Boba Fett. Yeah, there's just a lot to like about these. And again, yeah, because they're underfollowed, they're great collector items, and if they're really cool as well, that's kind of a pretty great combination in my book. So yeah, absolutely ones to consider in the underfollowed category. Okay, we'll leave it at that though. Thanks for watching, team. I'll see you on the next one.